2006. He's currently involved in a number of organizations, but I know Mark primarily from our time working at the Chamber of Commerce. When he was in the leadership at the Chamber of Commerce and the chair of the board there, I was on the board and worked with him then as a collaborative partner and just as someone interested in the community. And then I've known Mark most recently as with his leadership on the Startup Waco board. He's been a board member and a supporter of that organization for the past several years, conducted a lot of the initial fundraising for it, and a lot of the success of that organization is due to Mark's leadership. So I'm very pleased and proud that he's a member of Rotary and that he's going to serve as chair of the day and introduce our speakers. I'll turn it over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Ashley. Well, I know that as Rotarians, we all are going to miss Dan Ingham's news updates and jokes, but I instead plan to focus on the subject at hand today. Got two really great speakers that I'm really proud to be able to introduce. The first is Jane Allen. Jane is a lifelong resident of Waco. She had about a 23-year career in banking, started while she was at Baylor with First National Bank of Waco, and then finished her career as the founding president of Lorena State Bank when that charter was started back in 1985. And so I think it's safe to say Jane is a pioneer as a female executive of a bank. And so after that stint, she spent 20 years as manager of training and staff development at the Texas Farm Bureau. She retired about 13 years ago. But what was interesting on that is that during her tenure there, the Farm Bureau grew to have over 800 agents across the state. And so she and her team were really instrumental in onboarding a lot of those agents to the Farm Bureau. Other things that Jane has done, she told me that when her husband, Judge George Allen, retired from the 54th State District Bench, or Federal District Bench, that she was ready to retire also. And that's why she left the Farm Bureau. But since then, she has been involved in a lot of community activities. But even more interestingly, she also has operated step-on tours, which when people come to Waco and want to learn about the history of the city, she does a great job of being able to lead tours. And so Jane wanted me to be sure and mention that she is the interim executive director of the McLennan Community Investment Fund, which is a CDFI that started up to help with funding for startup businesses. And I'll let her explain a lot more about what a CDFI is. And then our second speaker of the day is John Passavant. John is the CEO of Startup Waco, someone that Ashley and I were really excited to bring on board in late 2019. And so John had the pleasure of showing up not too long before COVID really kind of put us all in this strange work environment. But John is a native of Pennsylvania, attended or graduated with a communication degree from Grove City College. He then had an interesting left turn in his career. All through college, he worked construction and he grew up on a farm. And so he really has some great roots and someone that is a very humble guy that I've enjoyed getting to know. But then he moved to New York City and worked as a ambassador for several fashion lines and developed a global marketing career. During that period of time, he also gained a lot of very extensive entrepreneurial experience and had his own company with another gentleman, and you can see in his bio, started up a entrepreneurial business himself. And so he can speak firsthand from that. He also has this great benefit in that his brother is head of innovation for PNC Bank, which is a large bank up in Pittsburgh. And they have labs that include financial tech operations and startup businesses. So he has a great network of being able to rely on those sources also. John is married to Jenny. and they have 3 kids, 4, 2, and 1. And so how John has time to do everything that he does is really beyond me. But John is a great guy that we really enjoy having in Waco. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn the floor over to Jane and let Jane tell us about McLennan Community Investment Fund.
Thank you, Mark. What a pleasure it is to be here with you today. I didn't know I had done all that. I hadn't seen that resume in a long time. That's quite fun to recollect. Being a retiree, I haven't been back in a Rotary environment or any other community environment like this in quite some time. So I feel like a Brady Bunch as I look around the screen from top to bottom and across in a diagonal. But it is a pleasure to be with you because I do have some very interesting news to give you. Many of you may be or may not be familiar with what is a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution. Waco is the proud, we can't say owner because organizations actually earn the right to be a CDFI, but we do have 2 others in Waco and 1 in McGregor. Oftentimes, credit unions are CDFIs because of their nonprofit status, and it does require those who wish to be a CDFI to be a nonprofit organization. So that brings us to McLennan Community Investment Fund, and that's who I represent today and want to tell you a bit about. But let me give you a little history about what is a CDFI. It is an extension of the U.S. Treasury Department. The Treasury awards grants, applications, a variety of different resources to 3 or 4 different capacities. There are currently 357 CDFIs across the world. And in 2020, those organizations received $187 million in awards as grant, awards, technical assistance, or loan funds. There are only 137 loan funds like ours in the United States, and 28 loan funds were awarded technical assistance grants, which is what we were awarded in 2020. But that total for those 28 was $3.5 million. So it's a very nice way to get a nonprofit started that is a mission-driven nonprofit, the goals of which are to provide loans to the unbanked and underbanked. It was already determined that there were 25 census tracts in Waco that met the financial requirements, and that being less than 80% of the median income of the city of Waco citizens. So those 25 census tracts are our target market, our investment market. The small businesses in that investment market will be who we will be calling upon in just the weeks ahead. We are truly just very, very close to being ready to offer loans to our small businesses, be they micro businesses, 5 people or less, including the owner, or greater than, still a small business. We are a 501c3 that was chartered in 2020 for the purpose of becoming a certified CDFI. We're currently an emerging CDFI. 2021's goal is to become a certified CDFI. And we will offer tailored resources and innovative programs that invest federal and local dollars, along with private sector capital, in qualified businesses to create jobs and strengthen families and small businesses and grow their community's ability to sustain itself economically, a goal we all have for our community. We are not an SBA lender, and we are not a competitor of local banks or credit unions. We are a lender to micro and small businesses that need a little help, and perhaps even other CDFIs as they come on board, and for nonprofit organizations and community facilities. So I have 2 reasons to be with you today. We know that hard work pays off. Every face I'm looking at in front of me knows that hard work pays off. So in 2020, we applied and were granted a $125,000 technical assistance grant that allowed us to open an office at Startup Waco. You all know Startup Waco, January the 2nd of 2021, and to begin the work of standing up our organization, getting all our policy and lending guidelines and all those things in order. Our very sincere thanks go out to a number of you and organizations that you represent today. McLennan County, the City of Waco, Waco Foundation, Cooper Foundation, Waco Habitat for Humanity, American Bank, Central National Bank, Community Bank and Trust, First National Bank of Central Texas, and American Bank. Likewise, the cities of Belmead, Lacey Lakeview, and the chambers of commerce in these cities have all been extremely resourceful and helpful to us. Elected officials came forth and really provided us good support in our application process. Once again, we do not exist to compete with our friends in their banks and our credit unions and other traditional financial institutions across the city, but we would like to put a dent in some of the title loan business and the pawn shop business and other predatory lenders. We are mission to serve the underserved, the unbanked, maybe even the unbankable at some point in their past or their current life, but those without business keeping knowledge or skills, those who are not eligible for traditional banking lending services. So in the spirit of collaboration, we look to our traditional lending friends and to you, our friends in the city, as our support and referral group. We've talked about our short history. Let me tell you who's involved in that. Tom Chase had the desire to establish a CDFI with knowing what it would do for our community in many, many different ways. Retired Justice Bill Vance offered his expertise and nearly single-handedly began the research and application process to accomplish the goal of becoming an emerging CDFI. Throughout 2021, we established a viable nonprofit organization duly recognized as an emerging CDFI by the U.S. Treasury. We created a board of directors to include Tom Chase and Bill Vance, myself at the time, Alfred Solano, and Andrea Bearfield. We have an advisory board, which includes John Alexander from Habitat for Humanity, former City Councilman John Kennard at Community Bank and Trust, Keisha Miller, co-owner with her husband Rocky of Prosperity Tax Service, Prosperity Travel Group, East Waco Empowerment Project, and their newest business is Slow Burn Mobile Cigar Lounge. Chris Gonzalez, a former banker, and he's owner of Ralph Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and Joe Welter, chair of Community Race Relations Coalition. Those folks serve on our advisory board. Together with these team members, led by our fearless President, Bill Vance, we've made great progress in applying for and being approved, building, fundraising, writing, and getting ready to begin to make loans to our fellow citizens living in the specified census tracts in McLennan County. Those were specified by CDFI at the national level. We've talked about those census tracts and who they represent. In those census tracts are 9,000 small businesses with fewer than 50 employees. And that's only in a portion of the city. That figure is according to a source called Data Axle. So we know it sounds really risky to consider and make loans to those not eligible for traditional bank loans, but we must take that chance with these small business owners, and we must give them an opportunity to buy new equipment, to borrow a little capital, to make improvements to their place of business, or even buy that location. We'll do so very deliberately and with the best intentions of making a real bankable customer out of one that is currently not bankable. In collaboration with McLennan Small Business Development Center at MCC, we'll work hard to develop and train these business owners so they'll know how to keep their business records accurately, regularly, and their bank account balanced. They'll know when it's time to buy insurance. They'll know when it's time to hire an accountant or a lawyer. They'll learn how to price their goods and services. All the facets of being a good business person. We want them to grow and be successful, thriving members, cooperative members of our community. So why am I talking to you? This year, we will make application to CDFI for a grant to further invest in our loan fund. The grant monies provided by CDFI are administered through the U.S. Treasury. A significant requirement of that grant approval is for MACSIF, that's our nickname, McLennan Community Investment Fund, for MACSIF to provide matching monies, dollar for dollar, that is granted to us. So if we apply for a $400,000 grant, we must raise that same amount of money through grants and donations. So now you know why I'm in front of you. You're probably not a potential client for MACSIF. You're welcome to be one. We will not exclude you from our circle of friendship, but you might not like our interest rates. You might not need to go through SBCD at MCC, but you are welcome to come and visit with us and learn more about how we do what we do. And you are eligible as long as you live or work in one of the census tracts. You and the businesses you represent can be part of our collaborative team in several ways. Perhaps you know a small business owner who needs a leg up, who needs our assistance in growing their knowledge and business skills, and they need a loan for a business-related expense. And remember those local dollars and private sector capital I spoke of? That could be you. We welcome your tax-deductible donations in any amount, and we promise we'll spend your donated dollars in a wise and purposeful manner. I encourage you to contact Bill Vance or Tom Chase for more information about that opportunity. So we bring to Waco a new level of alternative lending, helping our friends and neighbors grow their small businesses through a service they don't have right now. They're not eligible for. It's our goal to create good, bankable customers and citizens, and one day we'll turn them over to your bank. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And now it's John Posavant's turn. Hi, John.
Hi, Jane. Thank you very much for that. It's been a pleasure for me personally to get to know Jane and to be able to align what we're doing to address the issue of access to capital for our business owners here. So it's wonderful to be here also with all of you. Thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to explaining to you another way in which we're, as a community and as a group of community organizations, coming together to solve this really critical issue. I'll keep my comments brief so we have an opportunity if there are any questions in the end, but I want to give you the details and the specs on the program that we've launched recently called Kiva, and tell you a little bit about the progress that we've had to date and what we anticipate coming in for the rest of this year and beyond. So once again, my name is John Passavant. I'm the CEO of Startup Waco, which many of you are familiar with. I've been here just about a year and a half, as Mark had mentioned. And when I first came in and began to assess the needs of small businesses in Waco and in the entire Waco MSA, our entire service area, two things very quickly came to the forefront of what the core needs identified by small businesses. And one was sales support. How do I market and tell the story of my company better? And second was access to capital. And so we began to disaggregate our data along racial lines, along industry lines and vertical lines to understand where precisely are the biggest gaps in capital access for businesses in Waco. And the data went along with what you would expect, what we see nationally. There are certainly race implications to access to capital, but there's other implications as well. There are operations, how long they've been in business. There's been even certain types of businesses that have a harder time getting capital than others. And so as we began to say, how can we as a community come together to solve some of this, for all the reasons that Jane just mentioned, provide much needed capital for any business owner who needs it and who warrants it. how can we do that? And what are the tools available to us? And so several months ago, I would say late summer, early fall last year, we were approached by the National League of Cities, which is a organization that works with cities around the country on issues such as this. And they had partnered with this group, Kiva. Kiva is itself a nonprofit organization that's based in Silicon Valley. They've been around since 2005. And they were created as a platform to facilitate crowd lending to otherwise unbankable or unbanked entrepreneurs globally. They started by lending mostly in third world countries. And just in the last 18 months, they've begun to set that up for businesses in America. And they've done that through what they call hub cities, hub organizations. And so they partner with organizations such as Startup Waco to both get access to the businesses, but also provide a well-rounded, fully rounded support system for these businesses, because the dollar amounts that they lend in America are obviously much higher than they are in other third world countries. And so they realize that it's not just about capital, but also, as Jane was mentioning, it's about the support that goes along with it. And how can you help move a business on multiple areas from where they are to where they want to be and where they need to be. And so Kiva, as I said, is a crowd lending platform. What that means is similar to what you may have seen in something like Kickstarter, where somebody builds a profile, they post it online, and then people can invest. Literally, some of these are equity transactions that happen with businesses, and sometimes they're just pay for service. This is a sort of phenomenon that has arrived and is actually quite growing in its popularity among all different sectors of our economy, of people wanting to be a part of, in a crowd-sourced way, part of different funding rounds for companies, whether through private equity or through, in this case, debt. And so what Kiva has done is leverage that, and basically a company will go on, create a profile, and then they will go live on the Kiva platform. And then that opens them up to any of the now 2 million plus donors that are active on the Kiva platform. Now, there's a few reasons why that's significant, and that is at Startup Waco, we knew, we were aware of the McLennan Community Investment Fund that was starting up. We were aware of some of the other activities that were happening at the city level to help solve for this problem and provide access to capital for organizations. And so we tried to pick a lane that we didn't see anyone else addressing, that could essentially not be just a disparate way that there's all these different things happening in a confusing sense, but almost like creating a ladder, creating a very cohesive, clear way that a company, no matter where they are, an entrepreneur, no matter what their background or experience is, could find a place to plug in and to fit in and something that's right for them. And so Kiva, the way I view that linear sort of path, is that Kiva, for many of these business owners, will be the first step, the first rung on that capital ladder that they'll need, because they can come in, and Kiva is not looking at their underwriting process, doesn't involve things like a traditional credit score. A Kiva loan is a 0% interest loan for a business owner, 0 fees. So they can really access this money at no charge to them. And what Kiva does is their underwriting process deals with things like community capital. How well known is this business owner in their community? How connected are they to their community? How many people locally support them? Many of these business owners don't have the traditional things that are required for a normal loan. They don't have great credit. They maybe have something in their past that is preventing them from being able to access capital when they need it. Kiva takes those things somewhat into consideration, but they look at other factors such as community involvement. Their underwriting process deals with the amount of time, some traditional things like the time of operation that the business has been in, but also a debt to income ratio is considered. But they even do things like they create an exclusion score. They basically, through a list of questions and looking at the background of the individual, they score them on how likely they are to be excluded from the traditional capital markets. And they also create an impact score. If an entrepreneur such as this, they say, were to get this loan, how would that impact their community? And obviously all these things weigh in, that whenever an application is processed through Kiva, they come up with an amount that they believe is both feasible and it's not burdensome and onerous for the business owner, but it's something that can be repaid, that can serve their needs. And then that application goes live on the entire platform. And it seems to be working. They've, since 2005, since they've launched, they've administered over 1.5 million loans. They've distributed over $1.3 billion in capital to entrepreneurs, and they have a global repayment rate of 95.8%. In the US, since they've started hubs here, that repayment rate is over 98%. And so you're seeing that these entrepreneurs are actually receiving capital when they need it in the amounts that they need and able to repay it according to the schedule. So this is where we came in. What Kiva does not have is access to these entrepreneurs, and they don't have the relationships. And so that's where Startup Waco came in. We partnered with Kiva to launch the platform here and create a hub organization right here for entrepreneurs to be able to come in and very quickly with a direct line through Kiva be able to access these loans. We are the first hub city in Texas. We won't be for long. Austin and Dallas and others are being stood up. But we are the first one because we were able to move quickly. And why that's important is that opens us up to a lot of additional funding from outside of Waco itself to people that want to fund businesses in Texas. We noticed that recently, because of the storms that we had, a lot of people were looking to fund businesses in Texas. And so everyone who launched recently, were just funded very rapidly. And so we're excited about what this means. This is a first step for businesses if they're considering a loan. Again, we would love to speak with them to see if they could be a good fit. So how the traction that we've had to date, we launched this at the very last week of January. And we've funded 4 loans. We've dispersed $28,000 in capital in those 4 loans, and we have 6 more loans for an additional $53,000 in the pipeline this month. So we hope that by the end of March, we'll have our first 10 loans funded for a little over $100,000, about $112,000 in capital. And that represents another interesting stat is that represents over 600 different lenders that have contributed to these businesses. And so we're getting both a wide reach nationally, but also locally of people supporting businesses. And again, this is not an investment. This is not a donation. These are loans that the community members are making to these businesses that get repaid. And you can choose then to re-loan, or you can choose to take your money back out whenever you get it back. So these are not, unless you donate to an organization and you let go of that money and put in, this is not a tax deductible donation. This is a loan. Anyone can lend a minimum of $25, and you can lend to a business. So a few other ways that you can be involved. First of all, you can refer businesses that are looking for capital to Startup Waco. The process is that they come in, we meet with them, we assess their needs. We have a dedicated staff person who walks them through the entire process. They work with them, build the profile, submit the application to Kiva. Kiva feeds back with an approval or steps to follow to get to the approval with a certain amount that they're approved for. That amount will be between $1,000 and $15,000, and then the campaign goes live on the platform. Once that campaign goes live, another great stat for Waco is that the loans are getting funded in less than 48 hours, whether they've been for $2,500 or we've had one for $15,000. So we are really moving things quickly, which is what entrepreneurs need, and so we've been thrilled. So 3 things that you can do to participate. 1, refer businesses to us. They can just call or email Startup Waco, and they can come here and we can get them started in the process. We're looking for lenders. So if for as little as $25, you can participate personally. And we're also going to organizations and churches and other groups like this that can come in and say, hey, if at a larger scale, would you like to partner with us? The city of Waco was the first partner where they committed $50,000 to a loan matching fund that we're putting together, that we're directly loaning out to these businesses and sending a detailed dashboard of results of where that money is going. So anyway, a lot of exciting things here. I think the overall story is that there is some great new alternatives that did not exist even just a number of months ago for entrepreneurs in Waco. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here to share a little bit about Kiva. And feel free to come into Startup Waco anytime that you'd like. I'd love to meet you in person. Ashley, thank you very much.
Thank you both. We do have one question, and that's what the maximum amount of a Kiva loan is. Is there a maximum?
Maximum currently is $15,000.
Okay. Well, I wanted to make a comment, and then I have a question of both of you before, and we'll see if there's other questions that populate the chat room. If you have a question for this group, for these 2 speakers, please go ahead and post it now. When I have been on those visits to other cities that's Chamber of Commerce organizes, where we visit other communities and kind of see what their business climate like and what their community is like. And so we're very heartened having a robust set of access to capital from multiple sources. So not just a robust banking community, but also things like this is something we saw in cities that really had grown and blossomed because they had put together an entrepreneurial ecosystem, which is what Startup Waco is about. And then they put together these things that are really pre-banking stage things for people that have businesses that are not ready for that bank. So I think it's wonderful that we are seeing both of these come about recently for Waco, because what it means is a lot of expansion in the future. Then we also had a question about for the McLennan Community Investment Fund, sort of, I think that would be helpful for both of you to talk about. Do they go to one or the other, or is there a first stage, second stage, or is it just kind of you come talk to everyone and see what the best fit is? And then if there's, Jane, if there's limits or maximum amounts for your loans as well.
I'll begin there. With regard to limits, we actually have no limits other than our lending capacity, which will change over time. It will grow and develop. So we are answering the call of the borrower and setting our limit according to what the financial capacity of that borrower is, rather than pinning ourselves to a lesser or a greater limit. The same is true of interest rates. The interest rate will vary based upon the ability and the historical information and the capacity of the borrower. We seek our borrowers through different sources. We've not begun a full-fledged campaign to look for them other than word of mouth, which we think will be the best resource we possibly have. John, I'm sure you have a response.
I would say in terms of choosing what path is potentially best for an entrepreneur, the great thing is that, currently Jane and I are both working under the same roof. So if you come in here, there are things that she can offer that Kiva can't. And so once we get an assessment of what a business needs, I'm hopefully going to be able to funnel people that are appropriate to her, and likewise her to Kiva. The goal here is, no one's making money off of it. The goal here is to see that these businesses get the capital that they need so that they can move up, so maybe they can't afford interest. Maybe they need truly a zero interest loan. That's what Kiva can do. But we want them to be in a place where they're growing and they can afford an interest rate closer to market. And that's where Jane can come in and maybe needs more capital. And then eventually into traditional lending is the ultimate goal, as Jane mentioned. So, but I think you come into Startup Waco or call and you can get set up to the right area.
Great. One last question. What are the terms and lengths of the loans and payback periods for it? How is that different from a traditional bank loan, or is it very similar? And John, go ahead, Jane.
In our perspective, it'll be quite similar, but it will be built around the borrower's ability to pay. Hopefully that the collateral doesn't fall apart before the loan's paid for. We all know how that normally works. We will require collateral on our loans. So length and term it'll be very fluid. It's not written down anywhere. We do have some requirements with regard to how old the collateral is, what the value of the collateral is. We will have to determine valuation and such. So I'm sorry, I can't give you very specifics about what those are, because fortunately we can be fluid in that and not have to have a written set of guidelines that limit us.
Okay. And John?
And yeah, for Kiva, the repayment period is between 12 and 36 months, depending on the amount of the loan and the borrower's ability to pay, usually based on their debt to income ratio. There's no penalties of any kind. So the hope is that you're able to almost use it slightly like a revolver, to use it to launch something, to build something. You can pay it off more quickly, borrow more if you need to, eventually getting to the point where you need more capital, and I can walk them over and introduce them to Jane.
Great. Well, It's really great to hear about both of these programs today. So thank you both for giving us such clear explanations of what's going on. And for those of us who are watching, we hope that you learned a lot about this, and maybe you know of people who are good for referrals or would be interested in as investors or supporting these programs. So we just encourage you to know more about them and to share the link on Facebook when it's posted. So thanks to you both for joining us today, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
The next slide that we have, I just wanted to let everyone know that we know that there has been plans for reopening Texas, and that many of our Rotarians have actually received vaccines, although we don't know about the status of that. And so the officers are going to meet today, and please know that the board and officers have been thinking about this. We do have physicians on the board that have been giving us some advice. And for those of you who heard the great program we had with the president of the McLennan County Medical Society, we have some good resources. So we're going to get some good advice about what makes sense for us for having live meetings, and we'll try to give you the best information we can by the next meeting on March 22nd. So please plan to join us for that, and we'll tell you what we know about having live meetings for Waco Rotary, because I know many of you are very anxious to get back and see faces again and have some of the traditional Rotary networking. And so with that, we always close our meeting with the 4-way test of the things that we think, say, and do. And so normally we would say these things together, but I'll just say them aloud and you can follow along. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thanks so much for all of our speakers today again, and Rotary's adjourned.